Hello, welcome to this little experiment in videos. Today is June 17th. 8th edition's dropped. Had a big event at the shop, and I thought I'd do a little, I don't know, it's a vlog, I don't know what the term is, but I thought I'd take time to kind of talk about my impressions so far. Now, to kind of set the stage of why you're seeing such a strange video for me, the power is out here at home. Uh, yep, today didn't go quite the way I planned. I had a plan. It was a good one. Started out pretty good. It didn't end so well. About 5:30 or so, I found out there was a severe storm headed toward home, so I cut out of the shop early and made it back in time for home. Got everything unpacked in just in time for the storm to hit. Storm knocked out power. Knocked out the internet first and then knocked out the power. So, been without power for a few hours now. Don't know when it's going to come back on, but I didn't want to lose the opportunity to do this video, which was going to be me face to camera. Okay. Now, let me go through a couple things, how the day unfolded. At first, kind of, I was really looking forward to it, really exciting. Got to the shop about 1:45 to noon. Everything went on sale at noon. The event was going to start at noon. Everything, it was perfect timing. Now I had several lists prepared, and what I was going to do, my plan was to start with my completely recruit army in a patrol detachment. 40 power level points, that's what the shop's starting with. And the whole point was to learn basically how does the system work now. Just get through the mechanics of it, understand how the mechanics just affect the basic elements of the game. Fewer fancy rules and fewer things to look up. Because just looking up, movement and the new AP values and the new leadership values, in all honesty, sometimes the new strength or toughness values, there's a little bit more looking up. So really, it was learning the game all over again. So, I was able to record the first two, the only two battles I actually fought. The plan was to fight the first two with the Crude Army, then move on to Matau, kind of a mechanized balanced list, and then move on to just some weird combinations of, the kind of Riptide Hammerhead type Marker Light kind of lists, just to kind of exercise the rules and learn some of the new abilities. Well, as it turned out, we had to play, because there were so many people there, we had to play on half tables. So it was 3 foot wide by 4 foot deep is deployment. So deployment zones were, 4 foot apart. Our table edges were, and we had a 3 foot wide area to play on. That was not a problem, because it's only 40 power level, so it was like having a 500 point game. A little less than a 4x4. Yeah, it's doable. So, went through, I won't tell you, how they turned out, because you'll see this is the first in the Learning Curve series. Matter of fact, that's what I'm going to basically call this series, is 8th edition Learning Curve. And you'll see the results of the two battles. They're really short, small power level. The game's faster now. So let's kind of talk about, after those two games, it's interesting because the intent was just basically rotate through 1v1 games all day long, and that was, I can get 5 games in, maybe 6 in a normal Saturday, which I was looking forward to. But what ended up happening is, the guys at our shop, including myself, like to play larger and even like 2v2 games. It's just that whole epic battle kind of feel. But since we were all still learning the rules, we all agreed to stick with the Patrol Detachment 40 power level. So what happened is after the first couple battles, the people started breaking off into 2v2, and there were 12, 13 or so of us, and 8 of them were engaged in 2v2 battles. Now those took longer because, again, we're all learning the rules. We had basically double the size armies, and 2 sides going after it. And so not as many games were able to be played. Well, for me anyway, right? But other people were able to get 2-3 games in, not too big a problem. But then, of course, the storm came up, and so just as one of the 2v2s was winding down, and I had my second army all ready to go, I got the call about the storm. So didn't quite go off so well. Bummer, only had 2. I was hoping to try out more than just the one list, but playing it twice really helped. Because I've played this list before or very, very similar to it, very, very similar to it, in my regular 7th edition days and 6th. So I know how it performs just in general. Alright, so the 2 characters I've got in front of you, the Aethera on the left and Anshi on the right. These are my Kroot stand-ins for the Tau units, right? The Tau Aetherals. I have them here because, well, I only got to play the Kroot list. And so let's kind of go over what happened. Just rules-wise, not what happened on the tabletop. Just things I noticed. First thing is I kind of like is the deployment is 1 unit at a time, back and forth. And it's interesting because they have a different way of doing who takes first turn. They have a thing they call the underdog, at least in the Only War scenario, which is the one I played. Basically, the one who chooses deployment zones, if there's a tie in power level points, and there was in my case, it goes to the person who chose deployments. They get to choose going first or second. So basically, what happens in deployment is you alternate. You deploy 1 unit at a time, starting with the player who isn't the underdog. Or sorry, isn't the one who picked deployment zones. So what's neat is you can kind of, I don't want to use the term game the deployment, but you can start doing some of your strategy and your deception, your tactics and such right out of the deployment gate, even more than you used to be able to, because each of your units should ideally have its own job to perform, a primary role and a secondary role. And this way you can put down units that you don't really need to have in a certain perfect spot for first turn, and then kind of wait to see how your opponent develops their line before putting yours down. So there's some advantage, and I don't mean advantage to any one player, just an advantage in general to being able to do this. So both players will be able to react to the opponent's attempts at deployment. I kind of like that. Now when it comes time to actually dishing things out, movement was interesting. There's no real reduction in movement. You go through difficult terrain, I didn't see, again, we're all learning, so maybe there is, and please correct me if I'm wrong, just comment below. That's what this learning curve series is about. There will be no offense taken in pointing out the mistakes. I'm going to try to point out the mistakes we found in the captions of the bat reps, but we're all learning. So anyway, I played one. The first battle was in a whole bunch of ruins. The second one had ruins and just general rocky terrain, which didn't really benefit from cover. Ruins give you extra +1 cover, cover effect, so you're basically +1 to your armor. That's a good thing. It helps you when you have some of these AP4, what used to be AP4 weapons, which are now AP -1. The cover actually lets you keep your 6-up armor save in the case of Kroot. Just in general keeps your good armor save. That's really a good thing. but there's no loss of speed and movement except when you're charging through difficult terrain, which would be the woods and stuff. You lose 2 inches. Oh, that's no big deal. You actually, the way the game works now, you actually gain an inch because you don't need to get to base contact. You need to get within 1 inch. So you don't lose much in general. I didn't have anything in reserves this time, but one thing you're able to do now, you come in from reserves, you can charge. You come on the board with your teleporters or whatever, and you come in at no closer than 9 inches. Pretty good. You can charge. Again, you'll need a 8-inch charge to get within 1 inch of the enemy models. Very doable. And if you have your command points and you want to use them, you can re-roll one of those dice. And what that means is you may end up getting, if you roll 6 on one and 1 on the other, you're almost guaranteed to get in, even if you deep struck in, right? So there's a lot of possibilities for getting into close combat, even with the coming in from reserve, which I kind of like. In the battles, we got to do some kind of really practice the character buffing. The ability to reroll ones. I had opportunity to kind of relearn my Ethereal's abilities. They've kind of changed. I don't know if I like them yet. I mean, I'm not going to worry about what's good or not, because you know what? It's only the first day through it. We'll all get familiar with it and we'll get better. And then the codexes will come out and change it some more. So I'm not going to get all worked up about what's different. The psychic phase, I didn't have to worry about that. So can't really comment about anything on the psychic phase side. Now what is interesting is the advance. It's hard to remember to advance instead of waiting to the shooting phase to run, right? So a couple times when I should have advanced more units, but I didn't because I forgot and I'm moving into the run phase. Or I would have run them in the shooting phase, so I didn't think I had to worry about it. Again, learning games, we didn't bother going back and fixing that. I mean, we're just all learning. We're all making mistakes. If you make the mistake and you take the consequences, you learn it a little better. At least that's what I look at. So it was kind of interesting. The movement, some of these things, especially with the fly, you get to jump over enemy models. That's really useful. As long as again, staying away from enemy models by 1 inch is no different than the last edition. So that the movement doesn't feel a lot different. But it is nice to have some slightly faster units in my Kroot, Tau, and Eldar. Just it'll be nice. Shooting phase was really interesting. Rapid fire still works normally, and the cool thing about this is that you can charge regardless of what weapon you fired. So fire your heavy weapon, you can charge. Fire rapid fire, you can charge. I didn't bother advancing and using assault weapons because the only ones that had those were the drones, and I really wasn't gonna. They were in a perfect position where they were. I didn't want to get any closer because they already hit on a 5-up. I don't need to make it one worse. So advance, I didn't play around with as far as the using the assault weapons for that. Did notice that it's nice that flyers are able to you can hit them a little easier, but still -1 to your shooting is still a pretty big deal, especially since you can only reroll ones, natural ones, when you have that ability. You don't re-roll the 2s because of the -1. All the re-rolling is done before the modifiers are applied. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to hit a flyer still, which is good. It's not too hard though, but you can feel the difference of -1. I flew up again. A lot of them have that supersonic rule. That's where you get the -1 hard to hit thing. Let's see. So next, looking at assault. Now this is interesting. Well, no, let's back up. Let's go the vehicles. Everybody was going to say how terrible vehicles are going to be, and they're not. Went up against Leman Russ in the first game, and what's real nice is Leman Russ is now actually get a pretty good move. and they do not suffer penalties for moving and then shooting heavy weapons. So awesome! I mean, that's great. That's the way they should be. And I didn't have a way to one shot them, even though I had fusion blasters and heavy rail rifles. Nice, good 8 armor piercing anti-tank weapons. But nope, wasn't able to pop them in one shot, and that's fantastic. Even my Piranha, they're not strong by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not fragile anymore. Used to be 2 hull points and being open top. If they got hit with a Melta, 50% of the time, you go. I mean, just in Melta range, you are going to auto glance. So if you roll, basically almost auto glance. Only on a 1 would you miss. 3, you're penning. Most of the time you're penning. You're going to blow up a Piranha 1/3 or 1/2 of the time. Now with the new way, with the Melta shooting at it, or anything with this huge, with the ability to roll d6 damage, it's a 1 in 6 chance of wiping out a Piranha in one shot. It takes 3 good hits. Well, actually, it only takes 2 good hits, I think, to take out a Leman Russ. Maybe it's 3. But, it takes some real good, solid shooting to do the damage against the vehicle. And then the vehicles, they wear down. They as they get more wounds taken off, they become a little less efficient. But they're still a threat, and they feel like they're durable now, very much like the real things. I still don't like the reality is you can get shots in real life that can, one shot, one kill kind of thing. And that's impossible at this point in the game. But given the fact that if you have the right weapons, you really can take them down with reasonable levels of shooting. And I don't mean having to amass a lot of anti-tank weapons. Just have a couple, and you should be able to do a good job taking it down. The AP, the way to do the AP now really helps. Having AP -3 or AP -4, really hampers a Leman Russ's ability to make the saves. So I really think that's a good thing. A very good change. Very pleased with it. Of course, I didn't run. I ran the Piranhas as vehicles, but I didn't run any other vehicles. So based on my first experiences, I think it's really good. Vehicle combat is like, wow, cool thoughts. And I realized something in the tactics. There's some whole new opportunities now. You ask the question sometimes, well, why would you charge a vehicle with your, tanks? Especially since they're going to hit on 6s, and okay, they might be able to wound really well, but hitting on 6s, come on, that's not too easy. But what I realized as there was a close combat between 2 vehicles in one of the games, I realized that there's some opportunity. That's a good way to silence a vehicle's guns, because as long as you are within 1 inch of an enemy model, you cannot fire your guns at a different target. Now, we may have made a mistake here. I don't think you can shoot. No, I think you can only shoot pistols within 1 inch. So I don't think you can shoot the heavy weapons. I don't think a vehicle can shoot its weapons at a thing that's engaged in close combat with. But if you've charged an enemy model, and this was actually, I was charged, I realized that, that means I can't shoot. And if my vehicle is an anti-tank weapon, and it has been locked in close combat with I shouldn't say locked, but if it's in close combat with a enemy tank, I no longer can shoot that. And in fact, I will have to back up, fall back out of combat. And then that means I won't be able to shoot, or charge, or run, or advance, What it means then is that if I back out, the opponent is likely going to be able to chase me down and engage me in close combat again if he doesn't decide to shoot me, which he probably will, given the weapons he might have. But you're actually able to silence an enemy tank, a vehicle, by going into close combat. And that's actually pretty powerful and makes you have to start thinking about the value of falling back. Do you fall back or do you stay in? What are the options? Because if you can charge in with your infantry, the infantry can glance on 6 or damage it on 6s. Yeah, he'll get his armor save, but you can whittle him down. But each time you're in close combat, within 1 inch of the enemy model, you really limit their ability. They're not going to be able to just indiscriminately shoot at stuff. They're going to have to focus on you. So really interesting tactical layer. So I would have to look more closely. Now I wasn't able to buy the rule book today due to some unforeseen circumstances this week, but I did buy the Xenos 2 book like I planned, which is why I was running the Tau and I was going to do the orcs. So I haven't gone through the rules in heavy detail aside from the core rules that I was able to get. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but it really looks like it just says units that are engaged in, they're within 1 inch of an enemy model, cannot fire at anything unless they have pistols. And if they want to move away from the opponent, they have to give up their shooting and charging and that kind of stuff. And so it's a very interesting tactical layer. Next thing I want to mention is area denial has actually become really, really easy now to demonstrate and execute compared to the previous edition. So the next Academy video that I put out that's not Sun Tzu will deal with area denial like I was hoping, and there's a lot of good stuff in there. Area denial becomes important in many different ways. I'm really liking this, the way they've changed things up. It makes the tactical implications pretty severe. It's really good. I mean, in a good way, not a bad way. Now, close combat was really interesting. The whole idea of the charge first gets it. That's a good thing. There's a couple times tried to get in. Now, Overwatch is a thing now. Still, I thought it was bad before, playing Tau, being able to dish it out. But now every vehicle can fire Overwatch, which means when you attack even a flyer, you get Overwatch from the flyer. And that can really hamper your ability to deal out the damage. It's in close combat. As you get into close combat, what have you. So it's going to be interesting to see how we do close combat now. With the Overwatch, you got to think a few things, and set up your charges right so that the opponent can try to, because you can do multiple Overwatches. Charging with one unit that gets completely killed allows that unit that you charged to still shoot the next thing that's going to charge it. So you may actually want to charge with the full strength unit first, so that the smaller units can get in and not get Overwatched to death. Because 6s do happen pretty often. So that was kind of an eye-opener. One thing that I definitely do not like, this isn't this is just something that I just can't. I'm having a lot of trouble getting over. Is on vehicles, we've lost firing arcs, and I just think there's a lot of inane things going on. I mean, fighting against a Leman Russ, and again, nothing against the player. No, this is nothing to do with opponents or anything. My opponent didn't like playing it this way either, but you fire the sponson. There's a sponson on either side. The sponsons are designed and have always been a 90-degree firing arc, a little bit more than that, maybe it's 100-degree, forward and to the side. They are positioned on the side of the tank. The turret can go 360. The hull is forward only. Yet, all the weapons can fire in any direction you want. So, the left-hand sponson can fire out the right side of the tank. It's inane. I just think that is stupid. Completely stupid. There should be some sort of firing arc mechanism still in the game. I do understand that sometimes it's kind of hard to gauge, but they didn't have to get rid of it completely. Instead of having the 45-degree front arc for the hull, okay, make it a straight 90 degrees. Pretty simple. You just draw a line down in front of the gun, and 45 degrees off of that, boom, you got it. You can swivel the sponsons, turrets 360. It shouldn't be that hard to figure out, can you hit it? Are you in the firing arc? So I can live with the no benefit for shooting side or rear armor, but I'm really having trouble with this stupid no firing arc thing. Yeah, I can't. I'm having a lot of trouble with that. I can't just. I'd say it's rant. I don't want this to turn into a rant because it's not what this is about. But so that was one thing I'd really surprised me and didn't like. I didn't play it that way. I was pretty. I played it with the. I would turn my tanks and my vehicles, whatever, in the direction they were going to fire, since firing 360 doesn't really matter anymore. As far as no armor values are different on sides and rear and such. So I like the cinematic way of things. Makes a whole lot more sense. You can't shoot behind you. In all the games I've played, there's always been a firing arc for tanks. It's really having trouble with that. Okay, well, sorry, let's get off that. Now, when a tank, here's one of the things that I think is a little disappointing, but it's nothing. It's not a game-changing, breaking kind of thing. But when a tank rams a vehicle, I would think it would have a little better chance than 6 to do some damage. Of course, when it does damage, it's going to do a lot of damage. But it should be able to do something better than a 6. I mean, you just rammed into the thing, At least inertia should do something. So maybe I don't know, maybe there will be something. But right now, the 6 to hit on close combat isn't all that great. Maybe they should get a bonus if they're charging a vehicle. Something with the keyword vehicle. That way, you're more likely to hit a vehicle when you're charging. You're less likely to hit an infantryman who's able to run around and get out of the way, kind of thing. Just a thought. We'll see. But it really is fun to start having your tanks do something to the enemy when they're closing in. Morale phase, boy, that's different. I don't know that I completely like it, but it's not bad the way it turned out. There are plenty of ways to have your characters buff to give you some additional leadership values so you don't automatically lose guys. I had low leadership on some of my units, and by being able to use my Ethereal's leadership instead, I didn't have to make a morale test, because even if I rolled a 6 plus the models I lost, I still wouldn't exceed the leadership value. So it's not a crippling thing to have the lower leadership numbers. But I tell you, it is, when you decimate a chunk of a unit in one turn, it's likely most of them are going to flee. And, thinking back, it kind of makes sense. If you hit a unit hard and just guys are dropping left and right, the ones that remain are probably going to be a little more cautious and maybe want to pull back. So not a bad thing. I guess now, having experienced and watched how the morale phase works, and I guess it's a battle shock test or something like that, at least they call it in Age of Sigmar, it really it has a good flavor. And because you can fall back on purpose now by simply moving out of combat, it becomes a tactical decision. And I think it actually makes some more sense. So the guys you lose when you fail your battle shock test, they just run away. The guys you lost to fire, they got killed or wounded. So it's a good flavor. I kind of like it. It's working out pretty well. Lost a few units that way. So the opponent, that's just how it works. Overall, the games went much more quickly because they were smoother, fewer dice rolls to do throughout, and I did like that. So overall, I'm very impressed with 8th. There are obviously some things that aren't all that great. I'm not going to complain about any of the armies or any of the abilities because codexes aren't out yet. They gave us some interim rules so we can actually play with the models we have in this time before the codexes come out. So no sense in getting worked up about something that's not probably going to be a thing after a few months. So overall, I think it was pretty good. I know it's been kind of a long video, but those are my first impressions. Again, only having 2 battles with the same list, I was able to really get a good feel for how things are going to change. The actual Kroot list did not do any differently than it did in 7th or 6th edition. So, which is actually surprising. They didn't suddenly become powerful. They didn't suddenly become super fragile and pointless. It was in actuality, parts of it became stronger or more durable, and it stayed a fighting force longer. Of course, it was designed to, it wasn't going to be able to go up against the best of the best warriors out there, but it can hold its own. It can do damage. I could have used it a little better. But the last thing I want to kind of mention is the impact of 8th being so different on me personally. I've spent now years developing my approach to the game using the tactics I understand and the military theory I learned, and it comes fairly easily. But now with 8th being such a remarkably different game, with the units having such remarkably different abilities, and they might in the fluff have the same kind of thing, but the mechanics of the game have changed them so much that how effective they are relative to the other things has changed significantly. So yes, my Kroot can move 7, my drones can move 8, my Tau can move 7, and the Space Marines can only move 6. But what does that do to me? What does that make me more maneuverable enough to do some things I couldn't do before? I don't know. It's too early to tell. The marker light changes, and the ability for certain units to be able to make it harder to hit by subtracting 1 from your to hit rolls. Does it mean that I'm not being able to have a drone controller significantly improve the shooting of a drone? Has this really weakened my marker lights? The effects are good. I like the way I like the mechanics of it, but have they made it so much weaker that to get a hit is so much harder? I don't know. So the position I'm now in is that I cannot rely on what I know about how to use the army to apply the tactics. So now I've got to spend so much mental energy figuring out how to use the weapons I have, use the models I have, the units I have, apply them with the new mechanics. That's a lot of brain power. And hopefully I've got some bandwidth left over to think tactically. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. So this is going to be a long learning curve, at least for me personally, from a proficiency perspective, especially since I've got 6 armies to learn. But even just the one, Tau, it's going to be pretty tough putting it all together because of the variety of units I like to play with. And I'm trying to find the combination so that the combined arms that I bring support each other well enough on the field. So, this learning curve series, I don't know how long it's going to last, but we are going to go through the 8th edition, at least up through the end of July when they start the, what do you call that? I keep forgetting the name now. The global campaign, for Games Workshop, because I'll probably have a series for those, almost a from the front kind of reporting for that campaign, as opposed to my regular Saber duels or Saber Epic stuff, because these are themed campaigns that GW has put out for a global community, so I'll have a separate series for that. So these learning curves, you're watching me learn, and hopefully getting something out of it. Please help me learn by showing me my mistakes in the rules and what have you. Help me by showing me what you've learned, and hopefully you're learning from my mistakes, you're learning from my experiences. So that's the whole point of these. The rest of the Learning Curve series is coming out. The rest will be bat reps. I doubt I'll have any special insights after that, so we'll just have to see. All right, so thanks for sticking with me. Hopefully you'll be able to, you've gotten some painting done, you've gotten some something accomplished while you're listening to me ramble. And I hope your impressions of 8th are good, and I hope you're enjoying it. With that, I'll leave you to be, and we'll see you in the next video, whatever that happens to be. Bye-bye.